Right, hello everyone, this is part 2 of my How I Make Models in Gmax series, and it's following on obviously from the basic introduction. And in that basic introduction we learnt about creating very simple basic structures which you can move around, and you can do all sorts of things with, alter their sizes, manipulate them, remove bits from them, and all the rest of it. And these basic objects, which are called standard primitives in Gmax, I tend to call meshes, largely because up here you'll see in the edit area for this particular box, edit mesh is the tool that you tend to use very frequently indeed. And the reason also is that when you look at it in wireframe, you've got like a very basic mesh construction, and within that construction, so this is a basic mesh, you've got various points, and you've got edges, and you've got planes, which are the individual sides of each of these objects and of every object that you use. And all of these can be altered and edited and changed in whatever way you like, and this is long before we cover it with a texture to make it look the way in which we want it to do, make it look like it's actually a real building or a locomotive or whatever. Now all of these models that you make in Gmax for Trainz are basically just a collection of individual meshes like this put together in order to produce the final model. So the object which you're going to make, you have to break it down into a series of basic shapes. So for example, for a chassis driving wheels on a locomotive, I always start with the wheels, and I make those, and those are a series of cylinders, and then I put the axle in, another cylinder, and then I add the coupling bars and the driving rods and things like that, which are all basically boxes but just manipulated to a particular size and shape. So if we delete this and we just load one of those chassis, now this is the driving bogey for the Letterkenny and Burton port. Here it is. So this is created out of a series of cylinders and boxes, and you can see the basic shapes are all in there. This is basically a cylinder which I've just edited down to make a wheel, and then I've reproduced those 8 times, and then this is just a box. Okay, it's got some variations within it, it's got different sort of sizes, and you can see that every circle, of course, isn't really a circle, it's made up of a series of straight lines, and it's the way in which you decide how many of those straight lines of a circle that you're going to use. So a circle can be as small as a hexagon, a cylinder, hexagonal cylinder, if it's a very small item where you're not going to be able to zoom right in Trainz, it's just going to give the effect. But for larger wheels you want many sides to try and create the illusion of a circle, but it's pretty effective. This one, as you can see, has the 8 coupled wheels of the Letterkenny and Burton port, 484 massive tank locomotives which the railway ran. And just to show you, all those blue squares, by the way, come from animation. What you do is you actually make these little blue squares, you add these little blue squares, and you animate the blue square, and you add actual meshes to them, so they control the way in which those meshes then move, because the meshes then move according to the way the little blue square has been animated. So just to give you, I mean, this is way ahead, but just to give you an idea of what happens. So if I switch the animation on, you can see what's happening. That's cycling through one complete revolution of the wheels, and the piston rods are going accordingly, and allowing for all the other movements for the reversing gear and so on. And so this is an animated bogey of the type that you would use to produce a steam locomotive. And whenever I'm producing a steam locomotive, I always start by making the wheels for some reason. I don't know why, but I just find that's the easiest way, and then I work it up from there. And so we'll just stop that a minute and take it back to the beginning, and you can see there that's, I've been using those animation controls there just to demonstrate it. And when we come to export that into Trainz, we will export it as a mesh, and we will also export the little file that creates the animation. But more of that much later on. This is just to give you a taste of how far you can go with Gmax and produce a very effective looking locomotive. And the reason why it looks so weird is because this is the animated section, and the whole lot is attached to the body, the unanimated body of the locomotive, and the other two bogies, the front and the rear bogies, are added on separately as well. And the whole group of meshes then works as a single locomotive, and hopefully it looks very effective once you're running it in Trainz. And you can see there that all of this has got some sort of texture on it. It's not the original bubblegum colours that you get when you first start using Gmax. I've added textures to it, which I'll talk about in the next program, in the next section of this these tutorials. So there we are. That's a very basic introduction into that sort of preparation for producing animated models, and then we're just going to come back to that. So let's get right back to the beginning, to where we're doing our square. And the first thing we want to do is to see all of the 4 windows, so let's do that. And then the grid is very big here, very big grid for some reason. So if we come up to customize, and last time I showed you how to change from meters to US standard, so we'll do that straight away. So make sure we're working in feet and inches, and the grid's still big, of course. And we come down here and grid and snap settings. Now there are various options here. The only ones I've found of any use whatsoever is the grid, and I always make a home grid of 1 foot instead of 32 foot 9 inches. So I'm just typing in 1 there, and major lines every 10th. I mean, that's what nth means there. So every 10 feet you get a thicker line. Okay, so that's us. As soon as I click on that with the mouse button, that changes that grid. Okay, so now let's go back to what we started with in part 1, which is a box. Here we are. So we're just dragging that out with the left button, and then without any fingers on the button, it just moves up, and then we click it again on the left mouse button to fix the height, and there's our height there, and it's really really small. So for whatever reason, it must have been when I was working on the Swilly, the Burtonport rather, locomotive chassis, that I had to go right in deep. So the scale that I'm working on there is too small. So let's make it into something a bit more substantial. Let's go up here and make it, let's say 10 feet with a width of 8 feet and a height of 6 feet, just for the hell of it. And there we are. That's just a box. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to center the origin, the XYZ center point, which at the moment is based in the middle of the bottom of the box, at ground zero as it were. So we're going to move that automatically up to the middle height, so it's the middle of this plane, the middle of this plane, and the middle of this plane. So it's going to be somewhere in the middle of that box. So as I showed you in the previous one, we go up to here and we do effect pivot, because it's just the pivot, the center point. We're going to center it to the object, not to the lowest plane. That's the lowest plane, is that bit at the bottom there. And then we're going to make sure it's aligned to the world. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't change, it means it's already aligned, but do it to make sure that it is. Okay, so that gives us our middle position in the box. Now we're going to discover that this is actually not a box, it's a mesh, as they all are. Okay, so this is a rectangular structure, just about, what is it, 10 foot by 8 foot by 5 foot. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn it into the shape of a very simple lean-to waiting room. So it's going to have this front has got to be higher, and then the back has got to be a little bit lower, down to about maybe down to 7 feet, and this has got to go up to about 12 feet. So how are we going to do that? Well, what we've got to do is we've got to change it from being just a standard primitive box, as it shows over here, or we've got to start editing that. So we're going to choose one of these tools here. We're going to choose the edit mesh, which you'll find yourself going to all the time. Edit mesh. So we're going to do that, and that's added a command above the box, and it will allow us to see all different aspects of the box. So you've got a little plus sign there, so just click on that. Okay, and you've got various things there: vertex, edge, face, polygon, element. Element is the whole box. Polygon, well, I'm going to come back to these. I'll take them in this order rather. First of all, vertex. Let's click on vertex, see what happens. And what happens is we get a whole series of little blue dots. Let's just take this one over the wireframe so it's not so bright. Let's, oops, wrong one, that one. Let's zoom in on this, and you can see the little blue dots. And basically what they are is every time you get a connection of the mesh, if you imagine the mesh is like a spider's web, every time one part of the little thread of the spider's web joins with another one or several, then you get a junction. And that junction, if we go over the wireframe, see it clearly, that junction is the junction of those three, and that one down there is the junction of those three. Okay, and altogether, because it's a closed item, it means it looks solid. So, but we can change that. If, for example, we go up to smooth and highlights, and we just hold the left mouse button down and grab that particular one, and then we've got over here it's showing that we're working on vertexes within the whole mesh of the box, and we've got a whole load of extra commands that we can use down here. You're not going to use a lot of them, but a few of them are really essential. So we've got create, delete, attach, detach. Don't worry about any of them, but one of them that we have got here is break. That means break it apart. So let's try that, see what happens. So if we break it, nothing appears to happen. But now if we click away and click back, what we'll find is that instead of one point there, we've actually got three. And what's happened is that we've taken one bit of the mesh and we've really done something quite different to it. We just pulled a whole section away, whole triangle away. Now it has no back because the interior of the box has no sides to it, if you like. That's one of the weird things you've got to get used to in 3D modeling. So when we look at it from the back, there's nothing there, there's only the point, but from the front you can see that I've dragged away the one of the what is now 3 or even 4 points. I'm not sure how many it's created, but it fragments. Let's have a go with that one. Yeah, there's another one. Look. It fragments the point. Draw it out again, and basically you're changing your box into something really quite different. So you can see this is very flexible, very powerful. You can start with a box and make virtually anything like this. It's not the best way of doing it, but try it because it gives you an idea of how these meshes are put together. Try another one. There we go. There's the whole of that side is coming out now, or part of that side. Triangle. It's twisting out. Okay. So let's use the. I think we can go back several times. And there it is. It's no longer broken. And to prove it, hopefully, I'm just going to move it. No, it's still broken. So go back one more, back one more, back, back. See if it's still broken. Looks like it. No, it's not. It's all joined back up again. We'll just go back again. Take it back to there. Okay. So now we're back to our conventional mesh, the box with all the little vertexes joined up. So that's vertex. Looking at the box as a collection of vertices. If we look at edge, then what we're doing there is we're selecting a whole edge, and we can muck about with that. Let's have a look at it in smooth and highlight on. There we are. We can twist the whole thing, but it's the whole edge that's moving, and all the other edges, because they're connected up at each end, are moving accordingly, to react to that. You can get some really weird effects, but again, it's not the way in which really we want to do any of this change. Face means the whole of a face there. Okay, so if for example we were to select a face, just that one, and then hit delete, it removes. That side is actually made up of two triangular faces, for some reason known only to Gmax, incomprehensible. So we put those back, just hit the back buttons, okay. But if we were to say just select the side, and if you're not sure what you're selecting, go into wireframe and you'll see the red is showing you, and this is divided up into triangles as well for some reason. So if we delete that face, have a look in smooth, we've taken out part of the side, okay. So we're not going to do that. Polygon I'm going to come back to. Now this is because I think the reason why we've got all these triangles here is because we're using we still have it as a box of which we're editing. So one of the most useful things I've found in Gmax is to convert the whole thing quite early on into just a mesh to remove the effect of the primitive. So down here, collapse all, just collapses it to a mesh, and collapse it again to an editable polygon. That's a polygon. So it's got a collection of meshes, and if you look down here, we've got vertex, edge, border, polygon. Okay, so the whole thing now is not a box, it's just a collection of these vertices creating this shape, and it just happens to be box-like. But if we now look at taking off a face, we haven't got the face option here, but what we do have is the polygon option. So if we go up to wireframe and we click there, now you'll see that instead of it being a triangle that we delete, it's the whole side. And what's happened is by clicking on converting it into an editable polygon, we've converted it to its most primitive form, its most basic form. So aspects that were held by the box, features that make it boxy, have been removed, and it's now simply a shape which you can edit in any way you like. And this is crucial. Once you've mastered the concept of editable polygons, then all you do to make something as complex as that driving gear which I showed you is to make a collection of these polygons in all different shapes, all in the right place, and all connected up through the animation, and you're there. But for making a building it's even simpler, of course, because you just start off with a square with the size that you want, and you add a roof, and you add textures, which I'm going to deal with in my next upload, and there you are. Basically that's it, so long as you've got the right size and it is aligned to the world and it's zeroed in on the X and Y coordinates, so when you put it in Trainz it actually appears where you click rather than halfway down the street or wherever. And you'll have your roof and chimneys, and if you think about it, a roof is just a box with the top. Let's do it. It's just a polygon, and we'll pick up that one, and by holding down Control we can pick up more, and let's do what I was saying about making a shelter. So we want the Z coordinate because we want to go up, and we want the select and move button, and make sure we're still back. This is an annoying thing with Gmax. It tends to jump about on the coordinates, I've found. So make sure you're on Z, which should be pushing up, and if it doesn't, then try one of the others, because it's just treating vertical as length or something daft like that. Anyway, we'll go up. Look, so we're immediately getting our slanting, our pitched roof for the platform shelter. But of course we don't, we're sort of guessing where the height should be. In fact it's only 8'3.9". Let's have it a bit higher. You see what those, let me click off those. We've got 0, it's just the mouse movements around that are being shown down here. Okay, but as soon as we select on those points, those vertices, because we're in the edit poly and we've selected just the vertices that we're going to edit, so we're within the model, within this bit now, and it's stayed, it hasn't gone crazy. Look where the mouse is moving around, and it's given us 8 feet 3.9 inches. Well, we want it, let's say we want it 9 feet high, so we just highlight that, click on, sorry I clicked on 0, click on 9, and up it jumps. And then we can select these two here, and make sure you're only selecting those two, because if you look in wireframe, there are others, and remember, round the back here, now we can see the other one in the bottom corner, and there's the one at the front, that side, but it disappears just as soon as we swing that round. So make sure you select the right ones. Back to move and select, and it's 6 foot at the moment. Well, we make it 6'6", and 5 foot 12 inches. 6 foot 6. Enter, and it's jumped up a bit. And that's more or less the shape of our platform shelter. Now there's no textures or anything on that. It's just a block, could be anything. And it's the textures that add the reality to it, because unless we wanted to actually have it so that it was an open door here, for, you know, to put a few passengers, have them standing there, or make it look like you can see the interior, then what you can do with the texture is, if you have a photograph which is basically the front of a platform shelter, then essentially all you're doing is you're painting this face here with that photograph. And then round the side you want a photograph, a texture, which will make planking, vertical planking, to make your, and so you paste that onto this face here, and the same on the back, and the same on this side, of course. And then you want something like corrugated iron on the roof, and that's about the simplest model you can make, because it's just a variation of a box. Now obviously if you want a bit more detail, then you want an overhanging roof, and so let's make an overhanging roof for it. So before we can add anything, we have to exit this editing. So we just click on the main item itself and can click away then. But if we click on it, if we were just editing vertices and we try to click away, all that happens is our selection of whichever vertices we've been working on just stops. They're no longer selected. There's one selected, unselected, and we can't add anything, we can't do anything else. So we need to exit editing with this mesh. So we go there, click away, it disappears. And let's make another box, because the roof is just a box but a flat one. So let's make a box. There we are. And we've got to try and remember now this is something you've got to bear in mind as you go along. We've created here, turn this into an editable mesh, editable poly rather, but it means that we've lost the actual dimensions, because it's no longer a box, it's just a mesh, could be anything. So if you forget to write down the size of your initial box, which you're going to put a slightly larger roof on, then one quick way I found of doing it is just to go to vertices, select one of the vertices, and it tells you it's 4'4" and 1.116 inches. So let's have, so in other words 8 foot, 8 foot 10 would overlap a bit. So let's go back to this one and make the width 8 foot 10. 8 foot 10. Okay, so it's actually changed that length. So let's change the other one. 8 foot 10. Okay, so that's, I think we want a bit more of an overhang than that. Let's give it another inch each side, which is 9 foot, adding an inch each side. And then this distance here from back to front, but I can't remember what that was, I never wrote it down. So let's select this, go back to our vertices and get that where it is, and that's 4'4", so it's almost like a square, that position there for some reason. I don't think why that is. But anyway, so we'll make the other, so we'll leave that, and we'll make this one 9 foot as well. So overhang all the way around. Well, that's fine, isn't it? Next step, let's center it. Okay, but what we didn't do with this is get the width sorted out. 3 inches is about okay. So we'll just take away the extra bit, reduce it down to 3 inches, and immediately that changes the actual shape of this mesh. So we need to center it again. There we go. And we've got this one centered, we've got that one centered. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell Gmax to center this one on the center of that one. And the way we do that is we use this tool up here, Align. So let's click on that, and we're going to align. So you see the little, it's got the little tool added to it, and we're going to, this is the one we're going to align. So we now click on the one to which it should be aligned. So we click on that, and we get a dialog box. I don't think I've ever used any of these apart from these ones up the top here. X position, you see it's jumped along. Y position, and now Z position. Okay, and immediately you look at it and you think, oh dear, that's a mess. There's a problem there. First of all, it's in the middle of the other mesh. Well, we'll fix that. It's pretty quick to do, but also it's not big enough. So now, because this is still, if we look up here, it's still a box. It means we can change its parameters quite easily. So let's change its parameters here to 10 feet. There we are. And it's still not enough of an overhang. It's not like overhanging so much there. It wants to be more or less the same. So let's change it. Let's try 10 foot 6. See what that looks like. Yeah, that's not bad. Not bad. It's quite good. Okay. But it's in the wrong place, which is no good at all. So going up to our select and move, we've got it selected. So we want to move it in the Z, the vertical axis. So we just push it up. And the way I do these roofs is pretty basic. Put it up so it's more or less where the bottom of the roof is going to overhang. And then we need to see this side on, because we want it to take the angle. So there it is, side on, and we're going to work in wireframe on this. So we're just making this window the biggest. Now we'll edit the mesh. We won't convert it into a poly, we'll just edit the mesh at this stage. So there we are, there's the meshes. And what we could do is rotate it, couldn't we? We could push it up and rotate it. It's okay, but I don't like doing that because it does create some problems. And you know, Gmax has got all these wacky aspects to it, which sometimes just cause problems. Now, you'd think it'd be the Z-axis, wouldn't you? But you can see here that instead Gmax has made the Y-axis the vertical one on this one for some reason. So hover your mouse button over there till you get the move, select and move button up. And we're only going to select and move those, well, we selected those particular vertices, and we're going to move them vertically. So all I'm going to do is take it to there, and you can see immediately the thing is out of true. It's no longer horizontal. And we take those, and you see it's selected the Y-axis as the vertical one. I don't know why. Move those up until that base is just sitting on top of the roof. Okay, and then we just nip back over here. Well, the hand is the other thing I've down the bottom there I automatically use. And we just select those and drop them down a bit. And it's sitting on top of the body of the waiting room. Yeah, pretty much. There's a bit of overlap there, and you can zoom in. You can spend all day refining it if you like. Drive you mad in the end. As long as it looks okay in Trainz, you don't have to be too crazy about it. Though some of it you do want to be very precise. Okay, so let's go back to our general views, and there it is. Look, there's our. Click off the edit mesh, and there's the roof, which will take the corrugated sitting on our on the main body of the shelter, the little platform shelter. And if we select it again, and we go up to our favourite old effect pivot only, effect pivot, center to object, jumps up, align to world. Well, the alignment's okay, but the centering now on this has adjusted, because you can see what they call, the bounding box, those white lines which signify what you've selected, but they also show the volume which is being occupied by your mesh. So actually that's middle point is the middle point of this imaginary box, because it's the center point between all of the vertices of your mesh. Therefore it sits there right in the middle. Okay, and if we go to wireframe, you'll see that clearly enough. So it's halfway. Instead of it being, if this was horizontal, it'd be down here, but because we've made it into an angled piece, that's moved up. Of course, the vertical center point of the lower box it's still where it is. The reason why I like doing it this way is because you're left with vertical edges, which is pretty much what you want. If you just rotate, if you took the whole thing, let's put a box in here. If you put a box in here, okay, so let's have a look at that in smooth and highlights. There we are. If you put a box in, there's another box over the way. So if we put a box in there and we went up to the rotate one, now we can rotate this, no problem. Remember to have the 5-degree increments. We could rotate it wrong way. There we are. We rotate it that way. That one we want, isn't it? Yeah. See, we could rotate it. Let's go back so it's actually level. We could rotate it until it's the roof. But this face, then you then got to tidy it up, because that vertex there should be directly above that vertex there. If you imagine on a platform canopy where you've got the canopy sticking out at an angle, what you don't get is all the nice edging, you know, the fretwork and that hanging down at an angle like that. You have it hanging vertically. So that's why I like doing it like that. It's just a little trick, well, not even a trick, it's just a little habit really. So there we are. That's one way of mucking about with meshes, and you want to think a fair bit about all of that. Try bring in some other primitives, some of these standard shapes. Just remember it's this here. Make sure it says standard primitives. Don't worry about these yet. We'll be using this one and this one, helpers. We'll be using shapes and helpers, but we'll come on to that. What I want to do is to just get you into the basics, so I could actually produce a platform shelter, which is such a straightforward little structure. But the next session I'm going to do will explain how we can do a box. I'm not going to keep this. Do a box and put some textures on it, so it begins to look like what it should look like, as opposed to this, I don't know, sort of a beach hut almost, isn't it? Anyway, so there we are for part 2. Do practice, muck about with it. You can't do any harm to it. Don't be frustrated that you're not actually making a model straight away that's going to go into Trainz. These are the essentials. Once you've got these under your control, then you'll be banging out models like nobody's business, because it just becomes addictive, and I'm completely addicted to making these things. I enjoy it even more than making layouts. So there we are. So I hope you found that helpful. Don't forget to let me know if you have any specific queries about that. Just post them underneath the video and I'll aim to answer them. And please subscribe to my channel, because it all helps, and it'll keep you informed of when I post the next one. Okay.